Hey guys, how y'all doing? My name is Harmonic Chaos, and I hope you're absolutely having a fantastic day, a blessed day, and a blessed new year so far. I know, I haven't uploaded in a while. I was gone out of town, and then when I got back, I was just trying to get everything back into sorts because the week after Christmas and before New Year's always just seems like a blur anyways, and for some reason, the second and third felt like a Monday and a Tuesday, which makes no sense even though it was Thursday and Friday. It was an enigma, but I completely digress. So back to the matter at hand. So there's a little unknown, relatively unknown I should say, not completely, but relatively unknown band. They don't really have that big of an international presence. They're really known specifically in Japan. Oh, what was their name again? I saw it at least once. Right. Band-Maid. Okay, seriously though, for those of you who don't know, who've never watched one of my Who Is videos before, this is kind of a normal thing that I do. Don't come for me. Also, if you've seen any of my backlog, you'd know I know who they are. But yes, Band-Maid is a rock band out of Japan, but they are so much more than that. Also, if you were confused by their attire and choice of music genre, you aren't alone. So was I. I was very confused for quite a while. But honestly though, it makes somewhat, not actually, no, it makes a whole lot of sense because maid culture is a very big thing in Japan for some reason. I'm not entirely certain as to the historical significance of it all, but it's a very big thing over there. It's more of like their, it's a subgenre of their kawaii culture, I guess, is what they call it, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case. But anyways, this whole concept of Band-Maid as a whole really stems from the founding member Miku Kobato. English is my first language. I don't speak Japanese. If I butcher any of their names, I apologize in advance. So like I said, she is the founding member. And funnily enough, she actually used to work at one of these maid cafes in the, I've heard it pronounced multiple ways, but I'm gonna go with Akihabara. Akihabara? There's an H in there somewhere. I'm not entirely certain where it falls, but I think it's Akihabara. Again, Japanese, not my friend, but it's like a very large commercial and tech sort of district in the greater Tokyo. It's a part of Tokyo. It's a lot to try and explain, but basically it's like a neighborhood of Tokyo is sort of what it is, or in a section of Tokyo. There's a lot of like manga cafes, manga stores, and then more specific targeted cafes like a maid cafe. And like I said, Miku used to work in one of them, which is actually kind of funny to think that a cafe like that inspired the attire for a relatively hard rock band. Just like, thinking about working in one of those places and then being like, you know what I really want to do? I want to take this entire aesthetic, but make it better and make it associated with really aggressive rock music. Because I mean, honestly, if I was forced to be in an environment like that all day, I think I would want to be like, have an aggressive rock side of things too. So, you know, it makes sense. But that was the whole thing. Like, Miku has specifically stated in the past that she wanted to create a band that had this aggressive rock sound, but then had that stark juxtaposition to the maid cutesy look. So, and another thing that I find kind of funny about the whole founding and starting of this band and how they pieced together this ragtag team of hopeful, it sounds like I'm describing a movie plot. I'm not gonna say the Avengers, not quite the Avengers. Not quite. Actually, you know what? The Avengers of the Japanese rock music. It's what I'm going with, and that's sticking now. And that's just how I'm going to refer to them. That's actually not, but roll with me. So Miku was the founding member, the originator of it all, if you will. So she went out and found and recruited Kanami Tono. There's an accent over one of the O's in her last name. Probably saying it wrong. Tono? I don't know. But she recruited Kanami for the lead guitar role. And then, in turn, Kanami referred Akane Hirose. Again, sorry. I'm going to apologize every time, even though I said I'm apologizing in advance. It is what it is. But Kaname referred Akane to be the drummer for the band because they had worked together in the past. But wait, there's more. Then Akane referred Misa to play the bass because, again, they had worked together previously in the past as well. So it was just kind of like, oh yeah, so Miku found Kaname, Kaname found Akane, Akane referred Misa. It was just like, do, and then they all kind of just like filled in the roles, and it was like, oh look, this is perfect. So now that the four of them had, you know, formed the band, they started, you know, writing music, doing all this sort of stuff, performing live with Miku actually singing lead. And all that kind of kicked off in, I think it's early summer, like June-ish of 2013. Wow, that's a, Come on, brain, get it together. But then after their first performance, they decided to, I don't know if it was as a whole or if it was one of them suggested it. I don't know the ins and outs of all of that, but they then decided to recruit a lead singer. After doing some searching, they landed on Saiki Atsume in, I believe, August of 2013. And the rest is quite literally history. As a whole, they have released 7 albums. Made in Japan in 2014, New Beginning in 2015, Brand New Made in 2016, Just Bring It On in 2017, World Domination in 2018, Conqueror in 2019, Unseen World in 2021, and Epic Narratives in 2024, which is an absolutely insane release schedule. For the first 5 years of the band's existence and their careers together, they released an album a year, on top of doing live performances, other media appearances, and all of that other stuff, which is just that is an insane schedule. Also on just it's absolutely crazy, mind-blowingly crazy. And I mean, it really just does speak to their talent and how well they work together and their work ethic just as a whole, because it takes a certain type of grit and tenacity to be able to do something like that. More recently, they have collaborated with a band, again, a little fairly, anyway, not going through that whole spiel and diatribe again, but they collaborated with the well-known Mexican, also all-female rock band, The Warning. The single that they created together was called Show Me. And to be completely honest, that was a match made. You see what I did there? As I was writing, literally, I wrote that in my script, and I also hate myself for that pun, but I left it in there because, you know what? Why not? But yeah, that song was literally a match made in heaven, using the correct form of the word made there, not the other one. Anyways, if I don't actually decide to subtitle this section, it's gonna sound real crazy, like the ramblings of a madman, but the styles of the two bands really, it meshes perfectly. Because yes, they're both rock bands, but because of the other cultural influences that they have, one from being from Japan and the other being from Mexico, like they both exist in the same genre, but they have their own spin and their own take on it, and they're both great. So following the release of Show Me, both of the bands, which is very rare, sat down to do a interview about the song and about working together and the whole origin story of the whole project. So in the interview with Billboard, they reminisce on how they met, which is actually a really cool story. So they met in 2022 after they both performed in the Aftershock Music Festival in California. So from the way that the whole thing was written out, the members of The Warning, who are sisters, so if I say The Warning Sisters, that's why, they had been wanting to meet Band-Maid for what seems to be a very long time, because they've been longtime fans and all, and they actually say that themselves in the interview, which is just kind of funny. Like a band that, like, you have international like fame and recognition and just being fans of another group. I always find it so funny whenever like a celebrity is like, oh my god, I can't believe it. Like Tom Holland in the interview is like, oh my god, he's Robert Downey Jr. Like as if he's not also a celebrity. Anyways, it was kind of like one of those moments. The Warning Sisters, they were kind of doing that about Band-Maid. Like, oh my gosh, we finally got to meet him. It's so cool. I don't know why. It's like, hey, we're all human. It is what it is. So after they met and exchanged like pleasantries and all that sort of stuff, in somewhere along in this conversation, they both the bands came to the agreement that they should work on a project together, and thus that's kind of like the whole origin story of Show Me. So even when like Show Me was released, even though both bands exist in the same vein, being rock music, it's so cool to see like both of their interpretations of the genre, but also to the meshing of their styles in like one song. Like both bands' influences is so present. It was really cool to see. But even though they do have like two separate styles in the song, they mesh perfectly. And another thing that I found interesting too that they talk about in the interview is, I've always kind of wondered at the overall like conception and creation of collaborations between either groups, bands, two individuals, like when it comes to music, because it's like, how does that work? Because The Warning and Band-Maid, they were both releasing this single like together, but also like on their own platform. So it's like, it has to sound like both bands. It can't just sound like one band and the other one is like a feature. It's like, no, they both released it as like, hey, this is a song that we all worked on. So it's like, how does that whole process work? And it was really cool to get like an inside glimpse into how that actually works. So Konami was actually the one that kind of built the overall structure or the base of the song. And once that was done, they sent it out to The Warning. The Warning sisters took it and they made changes, added their own influences, all that sort of stuff to the song, and then they sent it back to Band-Maid. And then that process repeated itself at least a few times, probably dozens. They didn't really specify. But once that whole part of the process was done, they were left with what is now Show Me. And it was actually interesting too, because Daniela, in the interview, she was one of the Warning members, she said that, it was a little bit of a learning curve because Band-Maid style is very different from the Warning. But when they got that first track, they're like, okay, well, what do we do? How do we, put our, not to say like change everything and put our own spin on it, but like, how do we curtail this a little bit to what we do? And so they made those tweaks. And then, like I said, just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until they landed on what is now Show Me. And like I said, that was just like a really cool glimpse into how a collaboration works between two well-established rock bands. But yeah, with all that being said, that is a very 30,000 foot view of Band-Maid. If you would like me to do a follow-up on either any of the band members or, the band itself as a whole, going into more depth about like their touring or music, or like writing more of their music and stuff like that, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I loved making this video. It was a lot of fun to write and a lot of fun to record. So yeah, with all that being said, my name has been Harmonic Chaos. I hope you absolutely did all enjoy, and I'll catch y'all next time. God bless.